Hey, welcome back to the 7 most important tools for modern WordPress development. A quick reminder that you can get the entire series by going to briancourse.com and subscribing. So today we're going to build off of what we talked about last time with that WordPress slash create block package. And we're going to look at another equally important package in the WordPress Gutenberg repository. And this is called the WordPress slash scripts package. And it's basically just a bunch of scripts that make a build process for bundling your JavaScript, processing your SaaS, all that sort of stuff. And it's built into WordPress and it's used by WordPress. And it has a lot of kind of specific weird features that are like really useful if you're building things for the block editor. So I've used a lot of build processes in the past: Gulp, Grunt, Rollup, just like some vanilla like node scripts, those sorts of things. WordPress scripts is actually built off of Webpack. So it's really just a custom configuration for Webpack. And it has a couple of extra plugins that are loaded in. And what it's really meant for is bundling blocks and dealing with things like block JSON files and stuff like that. But you can actually use it, for everything that you're going to do that has to do with the block editor and get sort of the extra value of it. So that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at what it means to use WordPress scripts in your project. So I'm loading up my local VS Code here, and this is the same repository that we built in the last video, where it was just a scaffold for some custom blocks. So this is the same project that was built, and when that project was built through the create block package, they built this package.json file and it handled installing all of our node modules. And so we're going to actually dig deeper into that, because if you can see here, the main dependency they added is this WordPress scripts package. So that's the build process that was already included. And then in the scripts key here, they basically added all of the WP scripts commands. Well, not all of them, there's actually a bunch more, but they added like the ones that are most useful that you're going to need. And so we're just going to look at two commands that you're generally going to run. So I have my terminal here open to the same directory. I'm going to do npm run start. What npm run start is going to do is just put a background build process, and it's just going to watch your files and build them as you make changes to them. So it's really useful when you're in the middle of development. You run start, it runs in the background, and generally as you save changes, it's pretty quick, less than a second, sometimes 2 seconds if you have a lot of files, a lot of imports, a lot of different style sheets coming in. But this is just the command you're going to use to just run it in the background. And separately, there's another command called npm run build, which is going to do the same thing, but it's only going to run it once, and it's going to make much more like minified versions of all the files. And that's what you want to run just like that one time before you save your changes or push it to like a production server. And that's the command you would probably have if you have some sort of build process like CI/CD thing, some GitHub actions that are doing this stuff. So that's the build command, but we're going to use the start command generally as we're working and kind of like developing locally. So as we talked about, WordPress scripts is really meant for compiling blocks, but it's also really handy for anything relating to WordPress. But what you have to do is create a Webpack config file and extend its configuration, because they're extending the default Webpack config file. We're actually pulling that in from their config file, and we're adding our own entry points. And we're saying, hey, I have this JavaScript file. It's not actually a block, it's just a piece of JavaScript. Can you compile that too? And so this is something we do. We can add our own like style sheets, all sorts of things here, and it's going to kind of handle all of those and still handle the blocks that are in our plugin. So it's kind of one build process for everything. Super handy. So we have our custom config file, and over here we have a custom index.js file. And what this is just some JavaScript that I want to load on the block editor. So a lot of times you need to use JavaScript to add things to the block editor, modify core blocks, change things like that. This is an example that honestly we could probably do in PHP, but it's just simple enough to give us one thing to look at. So in this JavaScript file, I'm essentially calling the unregister block type function from this WordPress blocks package. And I'm going to call that function to get rid of the core/verse block, because my client, they're not poets. They don't need a core/verse block. Very few of us do. So we're going to unregister that, right? The point is that this is JavaScript that's going to run inside the block editor. And so this file is going to get compiled and processed by our build process for us, so I can do things like these imports from WordPress packages. So now that I've written this JavaScript and I've called in these different imports, this is where the WordPress scripts package comes in really handy, because it does something called dependency extraction, which is I'm calling in these dependencies, but I never like npm installed them into my project. So where are these coming from? Where are these WordPress dependencies coming from? Well, our Webpack build process knows how to pull dependencies from WordPress itself, things that are already bundled in WordPress that I don't need to install into my local package because I'm running this inside of WordPress. So that's like the kind of key differentiator is that all this stuff is going to get handled automatically. So when it bundles these scripts for you and it makes this nice minified version of it that is, completely unreadable, what's happening here is it's pushing things like setting them to the global window WP object. And then the really cool part, the part that's kind of the most important part here, is it's generating this little asset.php file where it's actually going to pass me two things. It's going to pass me those dependencies right here. So these are the dependencies that my script is going to need. And it's passing a unique version number, which means every time I save a change, unique version number, cache busting solved, super handy. So this is two little values that it's going to pass and handle automatically. And if I import more things, it'll import those dependencies as well. So now let's look at actually like enqueuing this script to the block editor and how we use these tools. So here we're looking at very quick WP enqueue script, and I'm inside of the enqueue block editor assets action, which means I'm loading this piece of JavaScript when the block editor is loading it. It's adding it as a piece of JavaScript dependency. And you can see here that index.asset.php file, I'm actually grabbing it as a variable, and then I can pass the dependencies and the version number to WP-enqueue script, and it's going to handle all of that for me. So I don't have to think about dependencies. I don't have to think about things. I can actually just pull in stuff from WordPress that I need, and the build process is going to handle all of it. So this was kind of like a lightning overview of the WordPress scripts package. There's a lot more power in it. There's a lot more things you would use it for. There's a lot more things WordPress core uses it for. But this is definitely a tool that if you're not using it, you should start thinking about it. And if you are already building custom blocks, you're kind of already using it. And so you can see how you can actually use it to have just one build process for everything. So if you want to get my next few 7 most important tools for modern WordPress development, just remember to go to briancords.com and subscribe. You'll get all of them, and I'll see you on our next tool.